Welcome in, everybody. We're going deep on something pretty crucial in this deep dive. Military communication.
Absolutely. Should be a good one.
We're using ADP 313, Chapter 5 as our guide.
Right on.
Think of it like your sort of cheat sheet for acing that training on how the Army uses inform to win,
Yeah. Inform to win. I love that.
both on the battlefield
Yeah.
and in the minds of people, here in the U.S. and around the world.
Yeah, you're right. It's not just about, talking. It's about strategic communication.
Right.
This chapter is really interesting. It unpacks how the Army gets the right information to the right people at the right time.
Okay.
And why that matters for everything. Troop morale, international relations, you name it.
Got it. So let's unpack this whole informed thing. What's
Yeah.
the big idea here? Why should our listeners care about all this?
Well, imagine, just picture a battle going on where your allies, they doubt everything you're doing, or the folks back home have no clue what you're even fighting for.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, talk about chaos. This chapter shows how important powerful communication is. Clear communication to keep things from going, completely sideways.
So are we talking about building trust here?
Big time. Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Where does inform even begin?
Well, chapter 5 breaks it down by audience, right, Post?
Okay.
Starting with the Army itself.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. You can't fight as one cohesive force if everybody's not on the same page.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what does it actually say about keeping those lines of communication clear within, the ranks?
It really stresses building what they call a positive command climate.
Okay.
And essentially what that boils down to is crystal clear communication about, everything. Your unit's goals, Army values.
Yeah.
Leaders have got to be actively shaping the information environment in their units.
So not just barking orders.
Yeah.
But actually explaining the why.
Yeah, the why behind the mission. That's it.
The why.
And this goes way back. You can think about General Eisenhower's address to the troops on D-Day.
Yeah.
He reminded them what was on the line, why their sacrifice mattered. A great example of how powerful leadership communication can be.
Yeah, powerful stuff. But, it's a new world out there. It's the digital age now. How does that change things? I saw the document even mentions online threats now.
Oh, it totally changes everything. The information landscape is completely different than it used to be.
Right.
Chapter 5 is very clear about needing to, educate soldiers on spotting and fighting back against these online influence campaigns.
Because, even a harmless tweet or something could have huge consequences, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The document even calls out geotagged photos as a potential risk. Think about it. A soldier posts a selfie, right, at their base.
Yeah.
And it just happens to be in a sensitive location.
Well, right.
That could compromise the entire operation.
Wow.
It highlights how crucial it is to equip soldiers to, to navigate this whole digital battleground is just as important as, the physical one at this point.
That's a good point, yeah. So we're talking about being what? Cyber aware?
Yes, cyber aware.
Not just informed,
More than ever, yeah.
in the traditional sense.
You got it.
But it's not just about talking to soldiers, is it? The document also mentions informing the American public.
That's right.
And international audiences.
It does. And it highlights how important the Army's obligation is to keep the public informed. Because public support, that's essential for any military operation.
Yeah, of course, right.
So think about town halls, press releases, community engagement, public affairs. All those efforts to connect with everyday Americans.
Yeah.
Explain the Army's mission and build that trust, that vital trust.
Right. Makes sense. And I bet it gets even trickier when you're talking about international audiences.
Oh, for sure.
Because now you're dealing with so many different cultures and perspectives.
100%. You're hitting on a key point. Chapter 5 really stresses the importance of tailoring the message to those differences.
Yeah.
Respecting cultural norms, navigating language barriers, being mindful of how a message might, be perceived in a different context.
You don't want to offend anybody.
No.
Or misrepresent the Army's intentions.
Exactly. That could be disastrous.
Yeah.
And that's where, this direct engagement is so important. The document talks about these soldier and leader engagements about, they call them SLEs.
Right. I've heard of those. Yeah.
These are those face-to-face interactions where soldiers and leaders can actually build relationships with local communities. It's about building trust through genuine connection. You can't substitute that personal touch.
Right, that personal touch. I like that. It's like diplomacy, but on a human level,
Yeah, exactly. Building bridges instead of walls.
Yeah.
Showing the world that the Army's a force for good.
Right. And that's got to be huge these days, right?
Huge.
I mean, shaping public perception when it seems like everyone's so skeptical of institutions.
Yeah, you said it. And that kind of leads us to a huge point, right?
Yeah.
This whole thing about combating misinformation and disinformation.
Right. Everyone's got a voice online these days. It's
Exactly. Everybody's a publisher now.
so easy for those fake narratives to spread so fast.
Like wildfire, yeah.
In the document, it feels like they knew this was coming, you know?
For sure.
Like they wrote it for the age of deep fakes and all this viral propaganda.
Definitely a sign of the times.
Yeah.
And Chapter 5 couldn't be clearer. Protecting the Army's credibility means going after those false narratives hard.
Okay.
It's about being transparent, telling the truth, and, really taking misinformation head on.
So are you saying, like, get out ahead of it before it spreads even?
Exactly.
Put out accurate info before the other side even has a chance to, like, spin it.
Exactly. This is the information age, right? Speed is key.
Right.
Think of it like a race. You're racing against misinformation. You don't want to be behind trying to catch up.
Right. Stay ahead of it.
Proactive communication, that's what we need.
So not just reacting to fake news and stuff, but shaping the story from the start.
100%. A good example is how the Army handled things at the start of the Iraq invasion back in 2003.
Cool.
They put journalists right there with combat units, gave real-time updates, first-hand accounts, really helped counter some of the rumors and the propaganda flying around back then.
Wow. That's a great example, putting it into action right there.
Mm-hmm.
So who's ultimately responsible for all this? Is it just the public affairs people?
Well, public affairs, they're vital. Obviously, they play a big role. But the document makes it clear it's on every soldier, every single one.
Really? You're saying it's not just for, like, the communications people. Every soldier is responsible for this.
That's right. Every soldier represents the Army, whether they know it or not.
Okay.
And they've got to be able to spot that bad information, that damaging stuff, and know what to do to stop it.
So you're saying everyone's, like, a spokesperson in a way?
Kind of.
That's a lot of responsibility.
It is, but that just shows how seriously they take this inform activity, right? It's not some afterthought, just check the box and move on. It's got to be part of everything the Army does.
Yeah, I see that. So if I'm getting ready for this ADP 313 training, right?
Yeah.
What's, like, the biggest takeaway, the one thing I got to remember?
This informing thing, it never stops. Especially in our digital world, it's constantly changing. The information environment, it's like a battlefield all its own, You got to be flexible, stay informed yourself, and stay in the fight.
Wow. Sounds kind of exciting when you put it that way.
It is. It's a real challenge, and it means you got to understand the information itself, yeah, but also the people you're talking to and what's going on around them, the whole context.
Lots to think about. So we talked about informing the troops, building that trust with the public, even fighting back against all that misinformation. It's definitely way more than just putting out some press releases.
Oh, yeah, way more. This is about shaping how people see things, influencing opinions, achieving your goals. It's the art of communication, but on a whole other level.
Next level.
Exactly.
It really is amazing when you think about it.
Yeah.
Communication, this tool that can really change things.
For sure. And we've just scratched the surface, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, this inform activity has so many different angles, and the document really, really gets into it.
Well, before we go too far down the rabbit hole here.
Right.
Any final thoughts for everybody listening?
Yeah.
As they're, getting ready for their training, something to think about.
Well, we talked about how the Army gets the word out, how they inform their audiences, the
Right.
what of communication, but the how, that's just as important. The
Yeah.
how, how do you actually communicate in this crazy, always changing world?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's different, if you're dealing with a hostile government, propaganda and all that,
Yeah.
versus talking to people here at home who have questions.
Big time. Chapter 5 talks about this. You got to tailor how you're communicating based on the challenge you're facing at that moment.
Right.
So think about operating in a place with huge cultural divides, or maybe religious divides even.
Right, yeah.
Or where people are just getting bombarded with misinformation.
Sure, yeah. Like from state-controlled media.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. How do you get through all that noise? How do you even know if your message is being heard? If they get it? If they even trust it?
It's tough, man. I mean, I guess you need to really understand the culture,
Yeah,
and build those relationships like we were saying.
you got it. You got to
Yeah.
be able to put yourself in their shoes, listen to what they're saying. You got to be a good communicator, but an even better listener.
So basically, the information game never stops changing, and the Army has to change right along with it.
Exactly, 100%. And that means never stop learning.
Right.
Think critically. Don't be afraid to question what you think you know.
This deep dive has been uh, really eye-opening for me.
Good,
I
good.
really didn't realize how much goes into this inform activity, how much complexity.
It's a lot, but it's about recognizing the power of what we say. Words have power, right?
Right.
They can really influence people, and at the end of the day, they can change outcomes.
Yeah, it's not just what you say. It's how you say it, who you're talking to, and what really matters is why.
Well said. I think we gave everyone a lot to think about today.
Yeah, definitely.
Good luck with the training, everybody.